Hello everybody. Wanted to shoot a quick little video about these small little 3-channel DMX decoders that you're seeing everywhere. There seems to be some confusion on the difference on all these things, so I just wanted to shoot a quick video and kind of clear some of that up. Let's start with this one. This is one of the very first DMX decoders that I ever ordered, and I'm still using it for testing different things. It's a very well built unit. You set the address on this with this little dip switch, and there's calculators. I've got a calculator on our website that shows how to do that, but it's just simple binary. The input on these, you have 2 blocks of screw terminals for your power, so if you're concerned with soldering, these are pretty easy to just screw right in. And then you have 3 for your DMX, your positive, neutral, and ground DMX. A lot of people question, oh, well, if you're running a separate ground or not running a separate ground on DMX. This is something I wanted to show everybody. On the back here, you can see the different pins. The ground signal for the DMX and the ground for the power feed are the same. So it's not that we're not running 3 wires for DMX. We are. It's just we have 2 for the signal and then 2 for your positive and your ground. So anyway, output on this is common positive, and then red, green, and blue negatives. Again with the screw terminals. So great little unit. Really like them. I built some very small enclosures for these just out of an 1.5-inch piece of PVC pipe. It's about that long. It has a cap on each end with a hole drilled in it and a rubber grommet for my 4-core to go through. So pretty neat little controllers, and they work very well. This does have an onboard color cycle. You engage it by turning on dip switch 10 and disengage it by turning off the last dip switch. And these are made by the same manufacturer, the same company that does the 27-channel board, so that works the same way on those 27 channels. The next one I wanted to talk about are these little white ones. This one in particular is from Holiday Coro. This is one of their new version controllers, and there's a few differences between that and the ones from China, and I wanted to show that. As far as I know, the boards that David has done, these are just for his product. They don't even look anything like the Chinese ones. They certainly don't work anything like the Chinese ones. And I think some of the problems people had, 2 years ago with addresses dropping and things like that have been addressed on these. I certainly haven't had any problems with one for over a year now. You can also get these from a few other sources, and I think most of the retailers that get these are using just the Chinese ones. As far as I know, Holiday Core is the only one that has a proprietary board on it. And it's deceptive because it's in the same little white box. It looks the same as all the other ones. But the internals, the actual board itself and the programming on it is not the same at all. And these do a lot of really cool things that the standard ones from China don't, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. But if you're looking for something to get started, something that just will let you play with DMX a little bit and RGB, either one of these controllers are very, very good controllers. One thing I wanted to talk about with these, and this one way to tell if it's from David is it has a little screw on the inside actually holding it down. I took this one out because I wanted to pull it out of the box, but most of the cheap ones from China are just sitting in the box, just the board like that. What I wanted to show on this is just how easy and simple it is if you want to use different wiring. So if you look at the board as I've taken it out here, it has 3 little solder pads right there, positive, negative, and ground for our DMX signal. And again, that ground wire is shared to the ground on the power if you look at the back where the two connect. And then again, two nice big solder pads, one for the positive power and one for the ground. And that positive, it just connects right across. You can see the positive is just a through and through connection on the board. And then each one of your outputs for your red, green, and blue negatives are labeled on the board. So on a lot of the fixtures that I've built, I actually take these out and desolder those wires so I can just solder directly to it. And what that eliminates is the need for soldering each one of these wires and heat shrinking or taping or whatever. I've had some that have come loose or where the solder breaks because this wire is very stiff and very delicate. So if it flexes too much or any movement in that wire, I've actually had these wires break. So I'm much more in favor of just soldering directly to the board. And I wanted to show kind of what that looks like. These are this is basically what you get in the beginner kit or the RGB trial kit from Holiday Coro. You get one of these electronic waterproof LED drivers, and these just plug in. I've got my cord wired up here, 120, to run them, and then they output, like as I've said before, I just solder the positive and negative directly to the board inside and go through the hole on the outside. So you can see mine are just attached directly. And then you can get these either with the Cat 5 on them from a couple manufacturers, or you can put your own 3-pin for DMX, whatever you want to do. It's just another option, but the two holes in the back of the box work nice, one to put the power wire in, the other to put your DMX wires in. And then these go out, I'm using just the same whip it came on, soldered right to these dumb RGB modules. And you'll see the 4 wires here, the yellow is your positive and then the red, green, and blue negatives. Same exact thing that we see on the outgoing side of the board, a single wire positive and then the red, green, and blue negatives. So it's very easy to connect these, wire these up. The other thing that I like about the starter kit from Holiday Coro is you get with it a programmer, and this plugs in USB to your computer. It comes with Cat 5, so it's made to work with all of the splitters and the wiring that David sells. I made just a little adapter for mine so I can run it on the 4-core. And all that does is just take the 2 pins 1 and 2 that are on the Cat 5 jack that this comes, and it outputs them over to the 2 wires that I use on the 4-core to send the DMX signal. But I want to show you some of the new stuff that can be done with this software, because on this one you're limited to just a straight either color cycle or just having it off if there's no DMX signal present. The same with the Chinese, they run through the red, green, blue, white color cycle if there's nothing hooked up, nothing present on them. These new controllers from Holiday Coro can actually be programmed, so you can make them run a static color if you wanted to use them as a landscape light or floodlight or something in the off season. And then as soon as you connect your DMX up to them, they'd be controlled by your computer. So I'm going to pause this and get all that set up on one of these strings so that you can see exactly what it does. Okay, so I got everything all set up here. This is, like I said, this is basically what you get in the starter package. Here's your electronic LED driver, and these things are waterproof. You can sit these out in the yard, whatever. I've just got this plugged down into my wall outlet, and I've got one of the little $8 decoders. This is one of the V2, the new version from Holiday Coro, going out to a string of the RGB pixels. These are the dumb pixels. On my DMX line here coming from the controller, I've got all my stuff wired back to these 3 pins now. And then my old setup, my old 4-core setup. And then this is the USB programmer. And this also works as a DMX dongle. So if you're running one USB out for all your LOR controllers and everything else, you can use this programmer as your second dongle, set up as your second network, and run all your DMX stuff on this dongle as well. So this is the new software from Holiday Coro, and it's made. It'll work with the older V1 controllers that they sold, but this has a few added capabilities for these new V2 controllers, and I wanted to show what that's all about. You'll notice that this string, even though everything's plugged in and powering up, it's not doing the color cycle, and it doesn't matter whether it has DMX or doesn't have DMX, but if I read this controller here, you can see that the built-in sequence mode is set to off. And so that means even if I come back here and I unplug my DMX, if I lost a signal or if wasn't running a show or whatever, these things stay off. So I'm going to go back in here. I can change that. There's a whole list of possible sequences, things that I think are pretty useful. So you can do any solid color. Now keep in mind, these will still go all 3 channels when you're sending a DMX stream. They respond to whatever your programming is. What you're setting here is what it does when there's no DMX. So you're basically changing whatever it was running before. Instead of doing the color cycle, it will do one of these effects. So say you wanted a white steady on, just to light front of your house or wall wash or landscaping lighting or something like that during the year. So I'm going to put that to white steady on. I'll tell it to write, and it shows me the status right there on the screen, and the lights will flash a little bit while it's going through this thing, but it tells me right there that my write was successful. So now I can come back to the controller. I've unplugged my DMX, so there's nothing coming from the program or the string or anything, but you can see that the white pixels are, or the white nodes are on. The modules are turned on. There's also a series of color changing effects. Like for instance, say I wanted a strobe. I can do a white flash. So if you did Halloween and wanted to use your floodlights as lightning effects or strobes, you can set that to a white flash, and we'll go to right. Again, it goes through its little cycle. When it's done verifying, you can see it's now flashing. Now the other thing, if you notice over here on the side of the screen, it has a speed. So let's put that on 1 instead of 50, and we'll write it. You can see the flash is much slower now. So let's turn up the speed. Let's go to 100 and write it. So you can see we have the full strobing effect. Now again, we can run multiple colors. So for instance, this is a color cycle, the cyan, blue, green, the magenta, red, blue, or the green, yellow, red, yellow, green. Let's do that one. And we'll take our speed back down and write it. So you can see it does just a fade back and forth. There's green through the yellow spectrum and into the red. So lots of neat things you can do with this. And then just to show, let's set this back on the, oh, and you can still do the color cycle, the default sequence from the old ones. You can still set it to do those, but let's set it back to off. We just want these things turned off unless they're receiving a signal. You can see we go through our verify. As soon as it pops up success, the string is off. So I'm going to show what this does if I open up just my little deck with the sliders on it here. Click our enable output. Even though the string stays off, as soon as I tell it to send a red command or a green command or blue, I can still control it. You know, the as you see, the controller is responding to the DMX signal that's being generated. So it'll work with your sequences, with LOR, it'll run whatever you're programming in the sequence editor to run. But as soon as you cut that DMX signal to it, then it reverts back to whatever you programmed it to do. So like I said, if you had a half a dozen floodlights at the front of your house and you wanted to use them year-round, it'd be very easy to go in with this utility and program them all to stay on, a static white effect when you had no DMX signal present. And here, I'll open up Programmer. So we had it on off. We could set it to go, a white steady on when there's no DMX. Just like that. And then regardless of whether it was plugged into anything, if our whole unit was just powered up and running, then we'd have a solid white light on. You could use that year-round with all your cabling in place. And then in order to get them to respond to a sequence, all it would take is to come and plug into your DMX, and away they'd go. So kind of a neat option. I'll be using quite a few of these. And like I said, I know some of the earlier ones several years back had a couple reported issues, and that was, I think there was documented 2 failures out of about 2,000 of those units shipped. To date, I think there's been more than 10,000 that have gone out altogether, and at least in these V2s, I haven't heard of any failures or any problems with them. So I didn't want to discourage people. I know there's a lot of talk that these things aren't the best, and this has certainly not been my experience with them. All those different controller types are good. As I said, I still use these quite a bit in my testing because they're so easy and convenient. Working with some water effects this summer that need 24 volt to operate the valves, and these will do that. They'll handle anywhere from I believe it's 9 all the way up to 24. But you can also get these smaller controllers. This is the 24 volt version of it. You can see it's got a larger resistor on it to knock the current down for the electronics on board. But again, lots of options, so do your homework. But for the starter kits and everything, you know, you've got quite a few options out there. Just wanted to kind of talk about the difference in all these types of controllers. The other thing I like about this is this power supply. As I said, I've got quite a few of those now that are I'm on year 3 with these, and still haven't had any problems and haven't lost a single one. These are, I believe, 45 watts. Yeah, 45, a little less than 4 amps, 3.75 amps. So, you know, this type of driver I think was $12-15, something like that, and this will run 2 of the floodlight fixtures. So I'm going to put the links to a couple of those starter kits in the description, or I'll put a link in the video.